From Wondery, I'm Mark Ramsey, and this is part 5 of Inside Psycho. April 17, 1961. Hollywood royalty, all in one room and at their resplendent best. Black ties, shimmering gowns. This is the night of the 33rd Academy Awards. In his seat at the Santa Monica Civic Auditorium, the celebrated director, Alfred Hitchcock, is squirming. He's nominated for an Oscar for Best Director, and the prize is just about to be announced. Gina Lollobrigida is reading the names of the nominees. Who else is nominated? It's not clear. And now, she is handed the envelope. Hitch feels the perspiration bead up over his lip. This is the moment he's been waiting for all his career. And the winner is... She looks out over the audience. Hitch could see what came next, but could anybody else? Could his friends, his peers, possibly see her expression shifting from broad smile to something else? Hitchcock knew images, he knew pictures, and this picture, subtle as it was, said disgust. And the winner is Alfred Hitchcock for Psycho. Hitch rises to his feet and walks up the steps to the podium. That's when he notices it. Nobody is clapping. He's handed his Oscar, the first he has ever won. His heart swells with pride, yet something's wrong. Nobody is clapping. I wish to thank... He stops, looking out at the crowd, his friends, his peers. Nothing is moving. No one is speaking. Nothing is happening. And then he hears it. One person is applauding, one person in this otherwise silent, full auditorium. But who? That one there, he sees her. A tall woman in a simple dress, gray hair pulled in a bun, hollow, sunken eyes, dry, dead skin, a face frozen in a horrifying grin. The music was finished, the rough cut done. Now it was time for Psycho to overcome its harshest judge, the censors. See, once upon a time, things that are common in life simply didn't exist in the movies. There was no sex and no nudity. There was little or no drug use, no excessive kissing, no lovers together in bed. Proper respect was due the U.S. flag and police officers. Bad guys needed to be punished. And of course, nobody owned or used a toilet. And nude scenes, shower stabbings, conceptually, these were not even close to acceptable. Hitch had his work cut out for him. In script form, Psycho already had one bumpy encounter with the censors. Of course, then as now, filmmakers commonly stuff the script with elements very likely to get flagged by the censors, sacrificial lambs. That's so the scenes they really care about can emerge unscathed. And the sequence Hitch cared most about was the one in the shower. Hitchcock sent the film to the censor board and waited for a reply. He did not have long to wait. The censors went ballistic over the shower scene. The problem was they couldn't agree on what they saw. Gentlemen, we have seen the sequence 10 times now. 3 of us are positive that they saw nudity. The other 2 of us are certain we did not. If we watch this sequence another 10 times, it's not likely to change what any of us think we're seeing. I propose we send the film back with a memo instructing Mr. Hitchcock to remove the nudity in case there's any in the film. Back went the film to Hitchcock. Please take out the nudity. Expressionless, Hitchcock read the memo. He unpacked the film reels and held them in his arms for a moment. He turned them over. He tossed them up and down. His assistant was puzzled. What are you doing, Mr. Hitchcock? Nothing, he said. Nothing at all. With that, he placed the unaltered reels in a new package and dictated this memo. Dear gentlemen of the censor board, the nudity has been removed. Best regards, A. Hitchcock. Back in the censor conference room. Gentlemen, we have viewed Mr. Hitchcock's revised edit of the shower sequence another 10 times. Now the members who were certain they saw nudity before see none. But those of us who saw none before are sure we see nudity now. We think. I propose we send the film back with a memo instructing Mr. Hitchcock to remove the nudity if there is any. Back went the film to Hitchcock. Please take out the nudity. And so it went, back and forth, for more than a week. Okay, I will take out the nudity, some but not all of you see, if you will allow me to keep the 2 lovers in bed in the opening, Hitch said. Horrifying, absolutely not. Okay, then allow me to leave the shower sequence untouched, and I will reshoot the opening, but I want you censors on the set to tell me how to shoot it so that you will approve it. The shoot was scheduled. The day came. Crew and cast were ready to go, but the censors were a no-show. The opening was unchanged. The lovers stayed in bed. In the shower scene, the one that did or didn't contain nudity, depending on who you talk to, it was not touched. Hitchcock got everything he really wanted. (1959) Akron, Ohio. It's Saturday, a day at the movies, and the theater is full of kids. Nothing quiet about these kids, not for this movie. It's House on Haunted Hill, the latest creation of schlocky shockmeister William Castle.
Come with me, murderess.
It's the climax. Vincent Price is raising a cheesy skeleton from a vat of water we're made to believe is bubbling acid. And at that very moment, from the corner of the screen inside the theater, a 12-foot glow-in-the-dark plastic skeleton emerges on a string and ziplines out over the audience. The audience was ready. It was always ready. What do you get when you combine an audience of restless kids with buckets of candy projectiles and a flimsy plastic skeleton hanging over their heads? You get target practice. Movie, what movie? Hit the skeleton with the jujubes. Classy? Maybe not, but it kept the turnstiles spinning. William Castle. He was the king of Hollywood horror hokum, the high priest of cheeseball ballyhoo. The skeleton gimmick was called Emergo, and it was a key part of the movie's publicity campaign. Castle tried to top it later that same year with The Tingler. This time, Vincent Price was a scientist investigating a giant centipede that materializes on the human spine during moments of sheer terror. During the climax, Price stares into the camera to warn the theater that the tingler has escaped into the theater. Look out! Then, joy buzzers are triggered beneath several seats, sending the audience into a spasm of screaming delight. The effect was called Percepto. And then there was Illusion-O, and the punishment pole, and the fright break. Indeed, the gimmicks are more memorable than the movies which featured them. Cassel's first movie was called Macabre. It was released only a year before Psycho was filmed, and his gimmick there was modest. Every moviegoer would receive a certificate for a $1,000 life insurance policy from Lloyd's of London in case they should die of fright during the film. Nurses were stationed in the lobby, and hearses were parked outside the theater. Emergo, Percepto, the insurance policy, all of it was in the Hollywood air when Alfred Hitchcock was shooting Psycho. Hitchcock, an A-list director if ever there was one, was cool to Cassel's B-movie theatrics on the surface. Yet here was Psycho, the least polite thriller Hitch had ever made, and the biggest risk of his career. Hitchcock stared out of the window of his production office at Universal. He looked onto a world that didn't care if Psycho lived or died. He needed to demand attention. He needed to hedge his bets. He needed a dash of William Castle. "1960. The final cut is done. Psycho is in the can. Executives at Paramount assemble for their first look at the finished picture. Just the suits, no Hitchcock. Universal made Psycho, but Paramount was in charge of distributing it. Up come the lights. Silence in the smoke-filled room. Utter silence. Paramount chief Frank Freeman is the first to speak. Gentlemen, I think it's safe to say that this picture is everything we expected it to be. Minor, forgettable, disreputable, and frankly, I couldn't be happier that it's Universal's logo on the film, not ours. Someone else at the meeting piped in. Can we dump this picture into thousands of theaters at once? Word of mouth is going to bury it, and at least we'll get a couple weeks of business thanks to Hitchcock's name. But it didn't work out that way. See, Hitchcock wanted to keep Psycho's biggest twist a secret. He wanted to maintain an aura of mystery around the film. That's why it was produced on a closed set. It's why he would only tease the elements of the film, nudity, bloodshed. He would never provide details. In those days, every movie was pre-screened for film critics and opinion makers, but Psycho would be different. No details would leak. No advanced screenings, not for anyone. Psycho had little to offer, a conventional marketing campaign, no big stars, cheap production values, a story that was largely unfamiliar. So what did Hitchcock have? He had himself. In 1960, it was common for folks to go to the movies whenever they wanted, no matter the show time. The idea of being told to wait until the next showing begins was peculiar, if not downright rude. And it's exactly the rule Hitchcock intended to enforce nationwide. Every newspaper and every magazine ad would stress it. No one, but no one, would be admitted to the theater after the start of each performance of Psycho. Giant lobby posters read, "It is required that you see Psycho from the very beginning," next to a life-size photo of Hitchcock pointing to his watch with a scowl on his face. Some signage was more tongue-in-cheek. We won't allow you to cheat yourself. You must see Psycho from the very beginning. Therefore, do not expect to be admitted into the theater after the start of the picture. We say no one, and we mean no one, not even the manager's brother, the President of the United States, or the Queen of England, God bless her. Well, the theaters hated this, of course. They were terrified that this tactic would not only turn away customers, but make them angry. And nobody wants angry non-customers. Still, Hitchcock persevered, and he doubled down. He offered tips for hiring security guards to enforce the rule. Listen to this. This man of the law will not only handle lines and crowds admirably, but can also help your cashier explain our policy when doors are closed. Such explanations bring refund requests down to a bare minimum. Now, anytime you have to talk to theater owners about refund requests, it's not a good thing. Recordings of Hitchcock would play to audiences as they enter. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for inconveniencing you this way. However, this queuing up and standing about is good for you. Psycho is most enjoyable when viewed beginning at the beginning. Unlike most motion pictures, it does not improve when run backwards. Hitchcock produced several promotional trailers, but unlike virtually all movie trailers before or since, there was not a single scene from the movie. One trailer was essentially a tour of the set. And another scolded viewers, "Please don't tell the ending. It's the only one we have." Psycho was, as the narrator said, the picture you must see from the beginning or not at all. Alfred Hitchcock bet his career on the hope that it would be the former, not the latter. In the era of Psycho, the fate of a movie was in the hands and the opinions of film critics, and their egos, then and now, are legendary. While some critics gave Psycho its due, many others felt slighted, insulted, that Hitchcock would have the nerve, the audacity, to do what no filmmaker had done before, deny them an advance screening. How dare you, sir? As a result, consciously or unconsciously, some of them would make Hitchcock pay a price, and the steepest price is a bad review. Bosley Crowther, The New York Times. A blot on an honorable career. Psycho is slowly paced for Mr. Hitchcock and given over to a lot of detail. The consequence in his denouement falls quite flat for us, but the acting is fair. Dwight MacDonald, Esquire. Merely one of those television shows padded out to 2 hours by adding pointless subplots and realistic detail. It's a reflection of a most unpleasant mind, a mean, sly, sadistic little mind. Sight and Sound, a very minor work. The Daily Express. It is sad to see a really big man make a fool of himself. When the Thrill King starts dredging this kind of cesspool, it's time for him to abdicate. Another critic. One of the most vile and disgusting films ever made. Time magazine wrote, "The experienced Hitchcock fan might reasonably expect the unreasonable. A great chase down Thomas Jefferson's forehead, as in North by Northwest, or across the rooftops of Monaco, as in To Catch a Thief. What is offered instead is merely gruesome. The nausea never disappears. It's a spectacle of stomach-churning horror." And that was not intended as a compliment. The very next year, Time magazine would rank a B-movie Psycho ripoff called Homicidal as one of the top 10 films of the year. The man behind Homicidal? William Castle. Hitchcock didn't sleep for days. Ready or not, Psycho was about to open, and audiences would either love it or loathe it. 2012, Birmingham, England. A 6-year-old boy with a fear of loud noises died for more than half an hour after a terrifying thunderstorm triggered a heart attack. He had just been picked up from school in the midst of the storm. That's when his heart suddenly stopped. Doctors believe the attack was caused by a sudden adrenaline rush brought on by fear of the noise of the thunder and hail. His life was saved by CPR, but it's proof. It can happen. You can be scared to death. June 16, 1960. This was it. Opening day. Alfred Hitchcock was in New York to promote Psycho. He was up early enjoying his first cigar of the day. That's when it happened. It was one of the Paramount executives just off the phone with the theater owner on Broadway. Something strange was happening. Hello?
Mr. Hitchcock, I'm sorry to bother you, but apparently there's some riots around the tower of the
What?
theater. I'm not sure what's really going on here, but it's getting
It is?
up and it's definitely
I'll get my driver and I'll be right there. Hitchcock arrived at the theater at 8:00 a.m. From the street, he rolled down the window and marveled at what he saw. There, outside the theater, many hours before the first showtime, a line was forming. And not a short line. A line that grew and grew as the morning wore on. It snaked past the deli at the corner and around the tailor shop down the block. What kind of fluke is this, the Paramount brass wondered. Is it the weather? No. It was not the weather. It was not the weather at all. Hitch returned that night to the same theater for an evening showing. He wanted to see and feel the reaction in real time with a real audience. He entered the back of the theater just as the climax approached. Lila, Marion's sister, has just entered Norman's house looking for Marion. Remember, the audience just saw the detective murdered while doing the exact same thing. Meanwhile, Sam Loomis is keeping Norman busy in the motel office. That's when it dawns on Norman. Where is Lila? She's going to the house. Norman leaves fast. Cut to the house. Lila is hurrying down the stairs. She sees Norman approaching out the window. She can't get caught. She hides in the stairwell, where she sees the door to the cellar. What's in there? She opens the cellar door. There, a figure, seated in a wood chair in the dim light, an old woman in the corner, facing the wall. Mrs. Bates, Lila calls, stepping towards the figure. She reaches out to touch her shoulder. The figure slowly spins to reveal. Lila screams. Her arm knocks the bulb hanging from the ceiling. The light sways back and forth. And there in the doorway, Norman, dressed as his mother, knife raised over his head. He's going to kill her. Sam appears. He grabs Norman, saved at the last moment. In the theater, it was shock. It was awe. People fainted. There were walkouts. It was pandemonium. Nobody had ever witnessed anything like this before. A contented Hitchcock sat back in his chair and smiled. Psycho was a hit. No, not a hit. It was a phenomenon. Just how big was it? And if you're the man behind a once-in-a-career movie like this, what can you possibly do for an encore? All that next time on the final chapter of Inside Psycho. From Wondery, this is a 6-part deep dive inspired by the story behind an unforgettable classic movie. This is part 5 of Inside Psycho. We'd like to learn more about you. Please complete a short survey at wondery.com/survey and subscribe to this show on iTunes, Stitcher, the Wondery app on Android, or wherever you listen. It's free. For more information and to comment on this show, visit our website, wondery.com/Inside Psycho. If you like the show, we'd love you to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps others go Inside Psycho too. Written and narrated by Mark Ramsey. Sound design and editing by Jeff Schmidt. Produced by Mark Ramsey Media. Executive producers Jeffrey Glazer and Hernan Lopez for Wondery. Please thank us by rewarding our sponsors with your support. Tell your friends about this show, and Mother thanks you.